Just so everybody knows, what I asked Sam to do today was essentially kind of go over some basics about 4-H Online. I know Liz has been using it, but never been trained in it. Candy, well, Marie just left. Candy's been using it too, so, but I think it'll be good just, as a reminder through the basic steps. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what we're going to do is start off, with the quick question. Have you both gone on, or has everyone gone on to 4-H Online at least once? Do I have any complete newbies, or has everyone tried it? It looks like Kevin has tried it. Absolutely.
I dabbled.
You dabbled, but you can sign on is basically.
Yep, I can sign in. I can search people.
Okay, very good. So what we'll start off with then is just how do you enter an individual enrollment. So you'll get a paper enrollment form from someone, or you'll get their information. To give you an idea, in Washoe County, we have people, brand new people, fill out a paper enrollment, and then I set up an account for the family. And then that way they can get used to it. And then from there on, they can go in and re-enroll themselves and add any new family members. But the reason we don't allow people to create new ones is some of our members thought they had to create a new one every year, or if they changed emails, they would create another whole family. And so we would get these multiple accounts for the same family. So our way of getting rid of that is have everyone new do a paper one, and then they can take it from there. That way they only have one family, and after usually a year, they're used to it, and everything runs smoothly. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen here. It's a county screen. You should all have that. And by county screen, I mean you can. There's several different levels. There's family level, and there's county level, and then there's a division and a state level, and then there's a U.S. level, which is mystical and no one knows where it is. Anyway, but the Nevada, that's Carrie, and me to some extent. I'm kind of the fallback. And then county, each of you should have your own county account for whatever you do, so that when you sign in, you can go to just search. You can go to search or go to members and volunteers and see whoever's in your clubs, but it'll only show you your county, if that makes sense. So what we're going to do is set up a family, and I'm going to set up a fictional family, which I'll delete later, but think of a funny name, the dog bite family. So we're going to add the family name, which is dog bite. And in a family with different, dog night, dog bite, with different last names, if you have a mixed family, you use the best is use the one of the last name of where they get their mail. So if there's a Smith and a Jones family, but the parents are Smith, name the family Smith. That way there's no problem when you do a mailing. The postman says, okay, Smith family, Smith mailbox. That makes sense. So anyway, we put in their name, we put in their email, and I'll just, you can't use the same email for multiple people. It has to be, for multiple families, has to be an individual email. I'm going to just put one in here that I know is not used. Excuse me. And then a phone number. And for some reason you can use the same phone number, but no matter, we'll get there. And then you hit add family. Now, right there, it pops up to family information. Should there be already an account for the dog bite family, you will get a message saying this other dog bite family exists. Do you want to go ahead and create this, or do you want to use the one that exists, or do you want to create something else? In this case, there's no other dog bites, so we'll go ahead and put them in at 123 Main Street and the city of Reno and 89501 and continue. And that creates a family profile. Now, when you put in a real name and a real address, this will say address verified. Because 123 Main Street doesn't exist in Reno, this is what I get, address is not verified. So we're going to ignore it now. But if you get it, if you're given a paper address and you input it and get that, something's wrong. It could be as small as having the wrong zip code, or it might be 123 Main Avenue instead of street, but something isn't quite clicking. So that just is your clue to double check the information that you have. But in this case, we're going to ignore that since we know it doesn't exist. And we're going to input the first of the dog bite people, a fine lad of 12 named Fluffy. So we're going here, we're going to input a youth. I'm going to stop right here a second. Is this speed okay? Am I going too fast, too slow? Is everyone okay with this?
Good for us.
Okay. So I'm going to add member, in this case, a youth. And this new profile comes up, and that's a personal profile. Every member has a personal profile. And they can have an individual email within that profile. If you don't input an individual email, it'll use the families. In this case, I'm going to leave it to families, but you could put, especially on kids that are in high school, they quite often have their own email or their own cell phone, and you have the capacity to input that. So here we do the first name Fluffy. And if he has a preferred name, you can put that there. Like if he doesn't like Fluffy and likes to be called Frank, you'll put it there, and then everything will come out as Fluffy, parentheses, Frank, dog bite. It's just up to you. If you have someone named Emily, but she goes by M, you can put that in there. That sort of thing. Birth date. This is in a set format of, and you can see it off to the right side, month, month, day, day, and 4-year numbers. It will take variations of that, but there's a possibility that you're going to get the wrong year. Quite often people put in the month and day and not the year, and it selects the current year. So you have people who were born in 2019, and that's, doesn't work. So we'll just put in a date here of 09 18 and 2007. That will make it, he's 12 years old. That'll show that he's 12 years old, or it will be on Wednesday anyway. Gender, male. Cell phone, he doesn't have his own cell phone. We're going to leave that blank for a moment. You only have to put the provider if you have a cell phone number in here. Otherwise, you can ignore that. On the application that Carrie, in her office created, there is a spot there for them to write their own cell phone and the provider of the cell phone. Do all of you have access to that paper form? You should. Okay.
It's in the Nevada box or last year's forms. I'm going to get this year's forms updated tonight. And so there's not going to be many changes to them at all. But last year's forms are in Nevada box right now.
Okay, very good. And so off we go. Years in 4-H. You always count the current year. So even if they've been in 4-H for one day, years in 4-H is 1. That just means this is their first year, and it'll automatically update year after year and keep track of that on their own. So first name, Mr. Unoriginal has Mary and last name of dog bite. And you can put a cell phone number in there. And another work number. We'll just put 1. There we go. And then the second parent. Now it doesn't matter if you do, what order you do the parents in. And in fact, if there are, we've had situations where a child was being raised by the mother and the grandmother. They're each equally in charge of the child, so I would put each of their names there. So you can fill that in. It's the same thing. You do have a chance, being as it often one parent's email is what's used for the entire family. This is the opportunity to put the other parents, not email, their cell phone number is used for the whole family. There's a chance to put the other cell phone in there. So you have both of them listed. This is, in case of an emergency, it's a nice thing to have. So we're not going to in this case, but you can put the second parent in there. Second household, again, if you have a family that's a blended family, they may have another parent at another address. This is your chance to put that in there. And if they spend a lot of time there or they request it, you can send correspondence to there. So if you do an email blast, which we'll get to in a little bit, if you do an email blast, it will go to both addresses. And that's that way it's covered. Especially with email, I never worry about doing that. If they don't want it, they can delete it. And if they do want it, it's there for them. That's the way, I would rather cover all the bases. So you can put in there second family name, the Jones and Smith. This may be the Jones portion. First name of the parents or the person. Primary phone, address, city. It's all fairly straightforward. And email. And then you get down to emergency contact. This is someone, and you can stress this with the parents, this is someone, not them. The first people we call are the parents. If you are referring to this list in an emergency, the first one you call is the parents. After that, if you've exhausted that, then you're looking for the emergency contact name. And that's, it can be anyone. They have people put in friends, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, you know, whatever they feel comfortable with, whoever they want answering for their child. If they're not there, that's who they put in here. So we're going just to do a name in there. Here you do first and last on the same line. So Gregor dog bite. Contact phone. And you can have a separate cell phone, email, relationship, grandfather. Now here's another important piece that you're gonna wanna know. Your 4-H county. Now this, of course, for us is Washoe. For you, it's whatever, you know, your county is in there. However, there's quite often situations that come up where a family or a 4-H member is in 2 separate counties. This is very common where we are because people will live halfway between Carson and Reno and belong to one Carson club and one Reno club. So if they're signed up in Carson first, we can go to select a second county and put in Washoe, or I could put in Carson. So they can have 2 counties listed. This alleviates a lot of the problem of getting them their email blasts and having them show up on important lists for notification of things. So it's important if they are in 2 counties to do that. Then we go down here. There, you know, are they a volunteer? If it's a member, probably not, unless you have a specific youth volunteer program. But they're probably not a volunteer. And then we get into the ethnic. Someone can be, you know, this is confusing for some of the members. I've had to explain it. They can be Hispanic and of any other race. They can be Hispanic and white, Hispanic and Asian, Hispanic and American Indian. But if they're Hispanic or they're, or Latino, if they prefer, mark it. And then if they say, well, that's none of your business, or they prefer not to state, we have that option. Same with the race. These are the standard races that are used in the federal reporting on most any federal form. This is how they're split out. And again, you have they have the choice of prefer not to state. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. I don't hear snoring, so we'll continue. The residents. This you have to, you know, for us in Reno and in Vegas, particularly, and in Carson to some extent, this is, we have to dice. You know, Reno is a central city. Sun Valley is a suburb. We have Fernley as a, you know, as a town. Actually, that's lying, but still, you know, is a smaller town. You have someplace like Nixon, which is a town under 10,000, or rural non-farm, or it could be out on a farm. You know, it's, you have to decide. Well, they have the choice of deciding what it is, but this is a good place to double check. A lot of people don't realize that, and this sounds odd to some people, but they don't realize that Reno has more than 50,000 people, or that Carson has more than 50,000. So this has to be, you know, you have to watch that a little bit. Where this comes into play is, again, in that federal report, which we'll be talking about later. Military. This is pretty straightforward. No, I'm not in, you know, no one in my family is in the military. I have a parent serving, I have a sibling serving. And if you click, you know, like I have a parent, then you have the choices of the different branches and whether it's active, National Guard, or reserves. depending on which county you're in, this is going to be extremely important. Or as in Reno, probably 99% are no one in my family is in the military. It just, it's just one of those, location things. I'm sure down in Las Vegas, there's a ton of these. School information. What county do they go to school in and which district? We have a lot of state-sponsored charter schools or private schools in this area, so we'll split them up. We have, just our regular schools, and occasionally we're going to have to go through if your area is growing, schools are going to be appearing. We need to make sure that we have all of the schools which we would use. We're going to we're going to put him in a junior high if I see one. There's one. Sparks Middle School. And then his grade, which is 7th. Once you do that, each year that grade will increment 1, but the school won't change. So it's usually up to the parents when they update and re-enroll their children to change that school. But you might, when you're doing their approval, which we'll get to in a second, you might want to go in there and check to make sure that we don't have a 12th grader in middle school. Just as one of the things to just kind of keep your database clean. Something missed. Oh, didn't actually create any of these. Okay. Next screen is additional information. On the paper form, these are on several different pages, but all the information is there. And it's pretty straightforward. Did they sign a commitment to excellence or code of conduct? That's in the form. Some people also run a separate form if it's for a particular club. But you can say that you received the if it's on their paper form, you received the document, and they agree to it, and they agreed to it on this date, or whatever date you want to put on there. It's also, in some cases, like in the medical treatment especially, you will get some that say, I do not agree. They received it, they signed it, but they do not agree with it. And that's their choice. But we like to keep track of that. And this comes in handy if, some parents, for whatever reason, religious or their own philosophy, don't want their children, to get any kind of medical. So we have to respect that and keep track of it so we know that it's there. The same with photos. Some will, this is a little tricky in the photo form. The standard UNR photo release has 6 different areas. You can video them, but you can't, or audio, video, photo, and then whether their name is released, their town is released, or you can quote them. So the first 3 come under here. If they're all yes, you can just hit received, the date, and they agree. If they're not all checked, you can put disagree. And this is a toggle. So if you put 1, it's only going to take 1 of them at a time. Then same with the quote. You can quote them or not quote them. A lot of parents don't mind pictures being taken of their children at camp or whatever, but don't particularly want them quoted. That's very common. So these will quite often, it's something you need to keep track of. And then t-shirt sizes. These will stay the same forever. This is another one they need to update. It's up to the parents to update each year, so that we know what, we don't have a a burly 18-year-old who's still getting their adult small t-shirt. And then we get to the health form. This is on the paper form, I believe it's listed as optional. We try to get this information if we can, just because it's good information to have. They don't, at least not in Washoe, they don't absolutely have to have this in order to register. But again, if there is, heaven forbid, there's an accident, it's nice to have the information.
And it's not required, like you don't have to fill it out in here either. But it is nice to have it, especially if the volunteers have access to be able to, in case something happens, they don't have to, they can find it too. But
a lot of this information, if you choose to let your leaders look at the profiles of the members in their club, this will show up. So it'll be, the leaders will have access to this information. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to go through every line here, but the company and whether or not the child is covered by that, policy number, primary doctor, phone number, and then again, if the parents are not available in an emergency, and here we have two names. They're quite often the same name as was on the earlier sheet, plus one more, but that's it. And then we go through a number of questions about allergies, whether they're life-threatening. A lot of times it's seasonal allergies, non-life-threatening, that sort of thing. And then we get into more specifics, any particular current chronic health problem. You'll see asthma there on occasion, something, of that nature. Does a participant have any current emotional, behavioral, mental health challenges? If they have any, they'll put them down, and you just, it's all part of the ADA. We make allowances for that. We make considerations for that. And it's actually helped a lot of kids along and learn to deal with, being out in public if they have, certain challenges that they have to deal with. And then if they have any physical limitations, and same thing, if they're, if they have poor eyesight, or they're in a wheelchair, or anything that, like that, we know about it and make considerations for that. And then here, this is often misunderstood. We're not asking if they're vaccinated for these. We're asking if they've had them. So quite a few children have had chicken pox, but not some of these others. They're, people my age had the mumps. You don't see it very often nowadays, luckily, thank goodness. But if they have had them, we like to have them on there. Especially measles. We've had situations where a child has showed up with measles, and it's, nice to know, who you need to contact. If you've had measles once, you don't get it again. But I'm not a doctor, I shouldn't be giving advice. Anyway, immunization. We just like to, know if people are immunized. There are certain people who do not vaccinate their children, and this is a place to make a record of that. For religious reasons or whatever reasons they have, they don't want to, that's their choice, but we do make a record of that so that we can, if there a situation arises, we can deal with it appropriately. And then this is just a list of different ailments or disorders, or just things that affect children that we like to keep track of. Everything from have they had a concussion, eating disorders, ADHD, to whether or not they wear contact lenses. It just gives us an idea if there's any situation that, you know, we need to be aware of. And anything not listed, we're given a box here to put in there. You know, only uses left-handed scissors, something, if we need it, it's there. Special instructions and so forth, medications. Quite often, you'll see asthma, you know, on here, whether or not they have an inhaler or whether or not they're taking sinus medication, so forth. It's good to know. Here is what over-the-counter drugs they can be administered to the child without checking. This is just the case, you know, if a child scrapes their knee and you want to put some topical antibiotic on it, whether or not that's okay with the parents. They have the choice of saying no or yes, but call me first. Tell me what's going on. And that's that. Please contact me for permission. That's a good one to keep track of. If you're having any kind of, it's more for the leaders, but if you're having, say, a day hike, you want to know where you stand with these things. Because if you're out in the woods and, you know, a child, you know, is sneezing, you might want to give them an antihistamine if that's okay with the parents. So that's something you need to keep track of. See, how am I doing on time? Running a little behind. Get through this. Now we actually come to the club part. You select a club. Now, if the child is over 9 years old, when you select a club, and these are all Washoe clubs, you'll have your own list in your own county. If you select a club, and then I kind of went through that quickly. You select a club, you add it. Quite often, kids are in more than one, at least in Washoe County and some counties, they're in more than one club. You know, they're in a livestock and a sewing club or a cooking club, so forth. So they have a choice of which ones to put in. You can put in multiple. Once you've listed the clubs, you go to the next step, which is to add the project they have in that club. Now, Side of Beef is a livestock club, so you have a choice of beef breeding, market beef, or beef non-animal. We're going to say market beef. If the child is under 9 years old, none of that will appear. The only thing that will appear is clover bud. And some, you know, in Washoe, some clubs accept clover bud, some do not. And clover bud policy changes a little county to county, so I'm going to leave that to your discretion of, you know, how you deal with that. But just so you know, in the system, anything under 9 years old comes up as clover bud.
Because technically that's the only project they can take. They can't take a beef project as a clover bud. They can be involved in a beef, you know, or a horse, or, you know, they can be involved learning about those, but they can't actually take that project. So that's why it only is clover buds. And I'll get that question probably 10 times at the beginning of the year. So.
Okay, so, you know, just, you know, get it out front. That's why that comes up. Quite often I'll be in such a hurry entering a stack of paper forms, but I don't notice the birth date. And I'll be going through and put them inside of beef, and then I hit that button and, you know, clover bud. It kind of, you know, takes you out of, you know, kind of stops you, but that way, you know, okay, you know, I can't assign them a project. So it's easy enough. Now, in most situations in Washoe anyway, at this point we hit submit enrollment. We come in at other times and we'll update what activities they're in, what awards they have, or what groups they're in. Usually not initially, but if you do in your county, you know, if the child starts in a program and is in a particular activity tied to that, or tied to the, you know, the club, you can go in here and state what the year is and what the activity is. So there is that option. Those aren't just blank tabs. They do function. Some people use them, some do not. That's your county preference. Okay, so once we get all of their projects, I forgot to do that. Side of beef, market beef, add project. Now, if you have a project here, say for whatever reason, someone came in late, didn't actually get signed up in time, and they come back and say, well, this is my second year in marketing, but it says 1, you can go in and update that. Or if they say, no, I'm not in side of beef this year, I'm in another, I'm in another club, you can say, okay, fine, you can delete it and add another one. Just go up, add a second one, redo the process. But if everything's kosher, everything's fine. And again, these, once you put these in, they're there. So they'll increment years and will be there until you take them out or until someone takes them out. So also at the end of every year, the status of everyone is recorded. So even if you take this side of beef out for this year, and then you come back the following year and say, nope, they're back in side of beef, the system will remember, okay, well, this will be the second year they're in side of beef, even if it's their third year in the club. So anyway, we'll skip, getting in a little too much detail. So submit. This is what comes up. You can double check your information. This is all what you've put in, all those that you've marked. And if everything looks good to you, everything looks fine, except member. Now, when you do that, you'll notice they show up. We're back at the family. Fluffy's right here, and there's their membership number. That's their membership number for all the time they're in 4-H. I usually write it on the paper form as some kind of, hard documentation of it. Shows their enrollment and what year they started. Now at this point, you can add other members. Usually, well, not usually, all times adults, when we add adults, it's after they've been vetted and have their fingerprints done and they're becoming a leader. That's the only adults we put in our system are leaders. Advisory board members are usually someone who's been a leader or a member for many years, and they're now going onto the advisory board, so we just change their status. That's how that goes. So that's how you enter a member. And if you go to you can return to the whole county list simply by going up here and hitting the county button. If you're in the middle of Fluffy's profile here working on something, you go, well, I wonder if he's got a sister or a brother that's in the same club. You can hit my member list and it'll pop right to this window of the family, and you can see if there's any more people there. Okay, so that's a quick, or not so quick, demonstration of the individual enrollments. Do I have any questions? Okay. I don't see my chat.
It's mostly just my questions.
Well, for some reason, you'll have to forgive me, I'm not too terribly adept at the new thing here.
One of my questions for this group is, would it be better, and I think I can do it, I've got to play with it a little bit, but on the media releases, would it be better to individually have those or have them grouped like I do. Think about that and let me know in the next couple days.
Okay. All righty. So since I've been outsmarted by Zoom and can't find my chat, I'll go to the next portion. This is, so we've gone over how to do the individuals. We're going to jump to some of the other things you need to do within 4-H Online, and that is the federal report. So we'll just go back to the search. It's kind of my default place to start, because it's quite often where you are looking people up, finding out if they're active, so forth. But if you have a group function, and this is like, say you have a horse show, or you have a livestock show, or you have a community cleanup, where you have different people from outside of 4-H, inside and outside of 4-H as a big group, you track who we have contact with. This is part of our federal report to find out how we're engaging with our community. Now, in some cases, you'll have something like we have nutrition and after school programs. So even though they're not a 4-H club, they're still 4-H. They're still dealing with youth, school-aged youth in the community. This is all part of, you'll hear this, people slur this together. ES, standing for Extension Service, 237. The ES 237 report is our big yearly report. It's extremely important. A lot of our funding has to do with how well we do on this report and what we put into it. So it's very important that you track everything. And you'll see here, I'm going to go into my group enrollments. That's where you input all of the group information for the report. And you'll notice, I'm just going to show this here. I have 277 records entered. That's for the year. I have, I think, 10 more to do. So that's about a year's worth right there. And you'll see what kind of things we have. The nutrition, the after-school program, day camping. Get down a ways here. Here is our after-school program doing rocket science. We also have, trying to find one of our regular, well, we have things like horse shows. I don't see them popping up for some reason. We also put things like, we'll have horse shows in there. When you do an enrollment, and I'll pop this one up right now. This is the blank form. You write the program name, and in this case, it's going to be just the 4-H. 4-H clubs, we'll say. Description, horse show. Or should be typing club, by the way, I do that. Anyway, and then the date of the show is the 16th, and the end date is also the 16th. If you do a program where you do, say, 10 visits to a school over the course of 2 months, here you would put the first day you meet with that group, and here you would put the last day you would meet with the group. I mean, it's pretty start date, end date. And then here you would list which group or which club or group this is associated with. You could, we have all of our clubs, our regular clubs at the beginning, the different groups like small animal clubs, home arts groups, and so forth. And then there's also other groups, that are working the school, which is our after school program. This is Grow Yourself Healthy is a nutrition program, Radon Education, Team Nutrition. This is where they gang up and go through all the different aspects of eating properly, and it's across different groups. But in any case, we're just going to pick one here and say that the horse club was done by the Spanish Springs, or the Silver Knoll Spurs. That's the group, and it shows it as an organized community club. That's its delivery mode. And there are several delivery modes. You have to get the right one because this affects different parts of that same federal report. So organized school clubs. In-school clubs are exactly that. It's a classroom or a group that's tied to one school, and that is where the club is. We don't have any of those in our area. I don't know if there's any in Nevada, but are there?
Yeah, Vegas has them.
Okay, and these are very plentiful in the South and Midwest. This is something that's worked really well for them within their communities. You have other options, an after-school club, military club, and then you get into these other things. Now, a short-term interest, that is actually what a horse show is going to be. These have they should be at least 6 hours long. That's the definition of them. So it's a special interest. It's a one-time, short-term program, at least 6 hours long. I mean, it could be over 2 days, but it has to be a total of 6 hours or more. Then we have overnight camping. What it says, that's pretty straightforward. And day camping. We do a lot of day camping programs with the local shelters and the local recreation centers over the summer to keep kids engaged, and learning STEM is one of our big things. Okay, school enrichment program. This is where they go in over a series of days, usually 8 to 10 meetings within the school time, within the school class time in school, to teach a particular subject. In most cases, ours are nutrition. Then we have the individual study and mentoring. We've done this a few times when we had one rather brilliant horse club member who wanted to learn and do a study on a certain type of horse disease. And so they followed it, strangles. They did, a report on that, but they wanted to do it specifically outside of a group. So this is the, that would be their delivery mode. And then you use this. With after school, we do a lot of programming, this right after school hours, but is on, using 4-H personnel and 4-H curricula. And this is in conjunction with the Team Up program here. It's in conjunction with the Team Up program, Washoe County School District. As we arrange with them to have clubs after school. Put this back on. Okay, presenter. This was Gregor Bogdite, or Bogdite. Oh, yeah. Dog biter. And the location was we'll put you in our equestrian, and the zip code 89502. That's close enough. And number of hours. Now, for something like this, it'll be, say, 6 hours. For that, after school, they may be teaching only 1 hour classes, but they're going to teach 10 of them. In that case, your number of hours would be 10. You just multiply the length of the class times the number of times you meet. Excuse me. And if the if you have military kids in your class, here's your chance to enumerate them. That's, we used to have our National Guard kids were a little more prominent. That's been, the focus of that has been shifted. That was a military decision. And so we have usually 0 here, but you may have more in your area. Now, we have federal nutrition programs, but we also have after school who teach kids how to teach, how to, say, make burritos or something, make snacks, healthy snacks. So if it's the federal program, if it's an FNEP or a federal nutrition, food and nutrition program, then this is checked. And that also goes into, everything in here is towards that federal report. So we need to make sure that this is accurate. If you just happen to teach cooking one day, that doesn't get checked. Here, you then have a list of I forget, there's 60 or 80 of these different subjects, projects that this belongs to. And these are the same subjects as you have in your different clubs, plus a few extra. You'll see things like junk drawer robotics is an actual program with a curriculum, junk drawer robotics. It's, there's, and I'm not even going to try my bad Spanish, but, there are different programs. You choose the one that corresponds to whatever you're doing. In this case, it would be, since we had a horse show, it would just be a general horse ad project. Then, once you have all that information in, go to the next step, which is member distribution. And here is where you input all of the demographics from that horse show. You say, while the show is going on, one way or another, through a sign-up sheet or through head counts or whatever method works best for your group, you count the males, the females, how many are club members, and either they're known or, hopefully they're known, but also if you have to, their estimated racial distribution. So it says right on the ES 237 report, be as accurate as possible, but give us your best guess information. So it's you try, if you have the solid information, fine. If not, you do an educated guess so we know where we're going.
One of the things I've done too, just to give everybody a little hint, and if I've done it, then I'm okay with it. It's not my preferred method, but what I've done too is, if you really truly don't know, I will go look at my county percentages of race and or of ethnicity and race, and I might break it down that way. If you know that there was a mix in your group, if you walked in and they were all, white children, then you obviously wouldn't need to do that. But when I was in a county that had a large Native American population, but the Native American population didn't necessarily look Native American, I would just use my percentages. So that's a good educated guess sometimes. Not the best way to do it, but it's a good, it is a way to make an educated guess. So try to get numbers if you can, though.
And this is going to be a lot easier in cases where you say you have a group of 10 or 20 kids. When you have, say, we do field day where we get 400 people, and there it's, you use things like when they come to your booth, you go, well, what grade are you in? Third, you say, okay, and you mark that on your list, and you get what information you can. So we're going to go through this. We're going to say that there were 20 males altogether at this horse show, but of those on the sign-off list, 15 of them were in 4-H clubs, horse clubs. That is your duplicate. That is what the duplicate means, is that, if you were to count them as new contacts, that wouldn't be quite correct. They're duplicate contacts. Female, 30, and we'll say also 15 duplicate contacts. Now, I want you to notice what that did to our totals. Here, you have 50 kids that showed up. 30 of them are 4-H members. That's the 20 remaining are all you're going to fill out for the rest of these 4 places. If you have, like in our 4-H after school, rarely do we have a 4-H member in that group. So we rarely use the duplicates. But in something like a 4-H function, a 4-H cleanup day, whatever, you're going to have a lot of members. And there's where a sign-up list will really help you out to know who is and who isn't. Then you do your best guess or your best estimate, because we can't really have a sign off and say, by the way, could you please put your ethnicity and race on there? It's just isn't done. I don't think I have to explain that. So we'll go to the next here. We'll say there's, of those 20, 13 were Hispanic, 5 were non-Hispanic, and the remaining 2 were Asian, just randomly. And so this is saying that of those 13 Hispanic, they were all white Hispanic. So you will have that in a couple of our events which take place out in Nixon. We have quite a few Native American, American Indian and Hispanic, so those numbers will go into that, because they're Hispanic, but they're also Native American. It all boils down to your final count. And okay, excuse me. And then same thing, where is this horse show going on? This happened to be going on out in Lemon Valley, which is a suburb of the cities. And all of the kids were from that area, so we put that down. And then here, it's not, you can on a sign-in list put age. We've done that before. Put your name, your club, your age. And if they have no club, no club or unaffiliated, and 12, okay, we're going to make an educated guess that a 12-year-old child is in 7th grade. So again, we'll just split these up. However, what am I doing here? It's making, just put a zip code in there. Okay, that's close enough. We split them up on whatever age groups they're in. If you have a group where there's some kids who graduated last year, but they're still within the 4-H, you can put them under post-high school. So they're 18 or 19, but they're still doing 4-H post-high school. On certain things like, the the horse shows or whatever, you're going to have someone participating that is just not in school anymore. And, you know, there we put those on there. Sometimes if we're teaching a class and an older brother or sister or a former 4-H'er is in there, but not in school. The special education, there are certain circumstances where individuals up to 21 years of age who have special needs are still 4-H members. And they go, you know, if they're in that demographic, then you put their number in under that. Okay. And then you go to adult volunteers. Now these are volunteers. If you have paid staff, they do not go in this. It's the, you know, your 4-H leaders or your parents who come to help. Those volunteers go in here, and you can split them. You know, say you just had, oh, not 22. I'll just throw in some numbers. Again, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, the same demographic cuts. Youth volunteers, if you have youth volunteers, you can list them here. And volunteers usually means they're not actively involved in the whatever the activity is. They're actually helping or teaching or whatever. You know, it's separate from the kids that are actually in the horse show, say.
And this is only for new volunteers. So if you have 4-H volunteers that are already through, you know, but this would be for anybody else that's helping.
Right. You have direct and indirect. So someone may be direct, you know, they're actually helping get the kids on the horses, they're setting up, they're working with that, you know, working with the materials, they're a direct volunteer. But you might have someone else who baked 1,000 cookies and made 25 gallons of Kool-Aid or nutritious high vitamin drink, we'll say, and put them on a table. They're indirect. So, you know, we start splitting hairs after a while, but, you know, we try to get the most accurate here. And then were the volunteers, the last thing, were the volunteers leadership, or were they learning parenting skills by doing this, or some other thing? And you split them accordingly. Then, in order for it to be added to the federal report, you have to hit that submit form. And once you do that, then you can hit save form, and it will add it and save you a copy of it. And it's saying, I need to put someone in here. Okay, so then that adds it to your list and to your whole federal report. Does that make sense? Did that, was everyone able to understand that? I'm not seeing any response, so hopefully so. Okay, on to the next chunk. This is the point, you know, we are in September, and I do want to mention that the federal report is due October 1st. Now, we county people don't send a report in. What we do is enter the information into 4-H Online, and on September 30th, switch is thrown, and that's it. There's just a drop dead deadline. No more can be added, and you start the clean year on October 1st. So everything you want for this year has to be input into the system by September 30th. And that is a very hard, very unnegotiable, a very hard deadline.
And I'm going to send an email out tonight reminding everybody of that. So.
Now, this is, what you need to have in line for all of that. You have to make sure all of your members are in your system, which they should be. If you're adding them as they come, that's not going to be an issue. Just make sure all of your active members are listed in your system. Make sure all of your events are in there. If you have a summer camp, don't forget to make a group report for your summer camp, because those go into another part of the program. So everything has to be in, and that's something that I wanted to really stress. And then on October 1st, all of your active members' status changes to inactive. Everybody, the leaders, your entire enrollment goes to inactive. And that's when you have to tell your parents, okay, go into your account, go in and check if your kids are coming back, part of the group, go in and reactivate them, re-enroll them. It takes maybe 2 minutes to re-enroll someone. And if they have 4 children, okay, that's 10 minutes to go through, with a little coffee time to go through all of that. I'm talking very loud. Okay.
One thing, sorry, Sam. One thing to remember too, the system probably won't be available on October 1 because we roll it over, and so it takes a few days for both on our end and on the end of the company to get it rolled over. So I always tell people wait until about the 5th to have your families enroll. Just so, because it does take a little bit to roll over.
Okay. And we want them to do that fairly quickly because, it just makes life easier. When I'm going to go over broadcast emails here in a moment. Oh my goodness, my time's getting rather short. So I'm going to jump to broadcast emails. But one of the reasons you want to have your list up, the time up, or up to date rather, is so that when you do broadcast emails, it goes to your whole group. One thing I quite often do, since we tend to know which leaders are returning, is I will go through and reactivate all of our leaders. That's so, the only reason I do that is so that all of the emails that I send out, I know at least go to the leaders, and they can distribute it to their members if necessary. But we actively push the leaders to get their kids on into the system. Okay. We're going to do broadcast email. And where that is, again, starting from the search window, your standard window, you go to connect. Now, if you're just sending out an email, you can go directly to broadcast emails. If you're, say, sending an email along with we'll say a form that needs to be signed and returned, you can make a PDF of that sign, you can take the form, make a PDF, make sure it's accessible. And then once the PDF is accessible, you can go into newsletters add newsletter, call it, whatever, health or nutrition form, we'll call it. And then the date you want it active, which is usually the same day you're putting it in. It'll show up on family's homepage. It'll show up on the manager's homepage if you click those boxes. Then you go in and choose the file. I don't have a file, so I'm not going to choose one, but you can browse through your directory, choose a file. It must be a PDF. You choose that, save, and it's going to show up, cancel out here, show up on this list. The last one I did was the Expo accommodations. We have an Old Timers Goat Show going. We have the latest Clover Clips newsletter. So those are the type of things I'm putting in there. And they will show up on the family homepage by themselves. But I usually will reinforce that and push them out to people on their email, which they're looking at more often, by doing add broadcast email. And we'll call this nutrition again, or whatever we want to call it. And if it's very similar to something we've done before, we can go in and choose what it's similar to, and that'll just give us a basis to start from. But if you don't have something similar, we'll create it from scratch. So subject matter, nutrition form. It'll store it, the whole thing under the name nutrition, but the subject matter in the email will say nutrition form. Here's a, you can send it directly to the families. And what that'll do is it'll send it to that email that's used for the family only. You can send it to members, and it will send to all of the emails for the individual members. So if a family has a family email, but one or two of the members has their own email, it will send it to those individual emails. You can also, if you want, only send it to managers. Then you can decide what you want to do with that. Even you can send it to people, even if they've unsubscribed from your service. You can, what I quite often do, use my email to reply to if they have questions. And if they've checked the fact that they want text messages, you can send a text message along with the email. So here is where you input an email, and this looks pretty straightforward for anyone who's used any kind of word processing. You type what you want to type in here. And you write the note. You can doll it up just a slight bit here by choosing the font, whether it's bold, and whether or not it's, say Comic Sans or Arial or whatever you want to use. You can change its color, so you can have a big red headline and black type or whatever. It's fairly basic, but you can put it in there. You can put in some custom characters if you need it. And then down here, you have 160 characters to write your nutrition. Usually what I use those for is saying there's a nutrition form which must be filled out. Details in your email. It's just a message to them to go to their 4-H online email and check, to see what all of the things are. Now, as I said, if you say put in a newsletter or whatever, added a file into that saved newsletters, this merge fields and docs, you'll see newsletter. And there is all of the newsletters that, all of the things that are in that list under newsletters that you can put in there. So we could put in the entry forms. If you had the nutrition forms, we could put that in. Whatever you had in there, you just double click it, it adds it as a, that's what you see when it comes out in their email. It'll say in red mock show, and they have that link they can click on and get the forms or whatever or the flyer or whatever you put in as your newsletter. Okay, it's a very good idea once you get your message the way you want it to save it. One other thing I'll mention really quickly is if you've written something in Word, and that's exactly what you want to put, you can cut and paste it into here. All of your formatting will disappear. If you want to keep that formatting, you can go to this little button here, paste from Word. This will come up, you paste into that window, and then insert, and it will add it in there with the formatting remaining. So that's a quick way to proof your message down to the nth before you send it, so you're sending them exactly what you want. Then once you've done this and you've saved it, continue. This is where you choose who to send it to. And that has to do with reports, which hopefully I can get into. You set up a report. It's basically a list of all the different people in a certain group. For instance, you'll see I have small animal mailing, livestock mailing, home arts mailing, and so forth. Leader mailing. I also have one that's just called mailing list. That's everyone. I'll use that. And it'll show you have 262 members, but because many of them have the same email, you have 175 emails going out. You can also go into that search function and flag certain people. So you could send an email to one person or just a small group if you want, or you can send it to all the horse members plus these 5 people who said they were interested by simply flagging them in the search list and then clicking send to flag profiles here. One of the tricks is to send it to members when you set up the email, and then here use this option, send to members family. Notice the number goes up a little bit. That sends it to everybody. The family gets an email, the members get email, everyone's covered. If you know that a lot of them have second families, I quite often will also choose send to second household. This sends it to both households. They can use it if they want it. Once you have everyone chosen that you want to send to, continue and send now and finish. I'm not going to send this out because it would confuse my members in my county. But you hit that, everything's good. And you can exit. Say you get to this point, but you're not sure you want to send it yet. You can exit. Nothing has changed. It's all there. It just hasn't been sent, and it'll save it as a draft. So that's how that works. That's the quick broadcast email. And you'll find they are very helpful in getting the word out quickly. And so, that's that end. Now we've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to jam through this. And this being reports. You'll notice I have tons of reports. I love reports, but that's my own issue. There are custom reports that you can build so you send to very specific groups. For instance, here I did this so that 13 to 18-year-olds would get this email. 16 to 19-year-olds, if you use that list, horse mailing, family list, you can really narrow it down. There's also standard lists. So you could send it to active members and or standard reports rather, and shared reports. So people from other places share how they can, you can use their setup to send out, to make a list for yourself for sending. To give you an idea of what this looks like, I'll just go to the leaders list, run report, and that's what I get. The names of all the leaders. This is how old they are. We don't care. And which group they're in, emails, phone numbers, addresses, if they're active, what their status is, which tends to be adult. Everything's in there. If you want, you can download that using this button as a PDF or an Excel, and you can download it to your desktop or whatever, and you get an Excel form with all of this information. So that way you could get a list, a hard copy list of, say, all of your horse people, all of your livestock people, or all of your kids that are in high school. You can make reports that are very precise to show you. We'll just do this really quick. This is, say I wanted to edit. Well, as I said, it had their last names, their initial year, their primary club, their cell phone. You decide what's in there. Say you decide that among all of those other things, you want to put in whether or not they get the, which newspaper or newsletter category they're in. What was their last active year? Health form, anyone with a certain primary doctor. I don't know why you would do that, but the point is, any information here you can put into that spreadsheet. And then you have filters, and this is where you can do something like wait forever for it to change. There we go. You can filter it down by saying, I only want these pieces in there. I only want it to go to this group or that group, or this particular project. You can also go to data format and say, I want, this is kind of gets a little more complicated, but you can say everyone who was born between this date and this date, everyone who's between 13 and 18, everyone who has both a horse and a livestock group. So you can use it's a very powerful tool, but it takes a while. I'm not going to cover it in one more minute, but just so you know it exists, you can set up reports to really pinpoint whatever group you want to use. And I think that was everything I was going to cover today. I don't know, are we ending now? Are we about to disappear?
No, you won't disappear on Zoom, but the other piece I want to make sure people know about is it just got moved. I noticed the other day, we do have a 4-H online help page or support page it's now on the state 4-H website, pretty much just out in the open for everybody to see. But it is on there. There's a really good resource for county staff that is from Idaho. There's no reason for us to recreate it because it's there. And then, but we have links to North Dakota, Idaho, Texas, and I think Iowa that all have resources for counties. But I know the book for Idaho, it's like something about 4-H online for county professionals. it will walk you through step by step how to do the custom report. So, and if you have trouble with it, I've learned how to do them. I now don't have to call every time I try to do a custom report. I think I've figured it out most of the time, but because I pull that book out and remember how to do it. So.
One of the other things that I did that was helpful was I created a small, just a 12-page little pamphlet to give to all of our members that shows them step by step how to go in, set up their family, or find their family, and make changes or update, what they needed to update. So it was just, very simple, right there in front of them. I did screen captures to show them the different operations. And something like that helps to make it a lot easier, and you end up having to deal with a lot fewer questions that way.
And I think, Sam, didn't I share that on our website or in the Nevada box?
I don't remember offhand, but if it's not there, I'll be more than happy to send it to you.
Okay. I'm going to see. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find it. I think I did, but if not, I will make sure it's in there.
Okay. Well, I hope you all got something out of that. And, there's always, if you have questions, let me know. I'll see what I can do to help. Okay.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.